He did not want Jewish people who were different than what his kingdom was. He wanted them to stop being Jewish. And if the Jews had assimilated, then there would have been no seed of the Jew, because in Genesis 12:3, we're told that in the seed of Abraham, all the Gentiles, all the nations of the world would be blessed. So this Antiochus Epiphanes, and by the way, Epiphanes was his title. It means God manifest. You see, it's like a mirror image of what the Messiah was going to do in reverse. So like a type of an antichrist. He thought he was God, and he would go into the temple. I mean, this opens up such a vista of understanding when you understand your Jewish roots. And then Isaiah 7:14 says, we're going to have a miracle sign. A virgin shall conceive and have a child. This child's name will be Emmanuel. Do you know what Emmanuel means? God with us. You see, the other was a counterfeit. You can't have a counterfeit unless there's an authentic. So that's why I say there could be no Christmas without Hanukkah. So many things have been stolen from us, like our Jewish roots. And I have a friend by the name of Pastor Bill Ligon that God has worked for many years in him to understand something that has been hijacked from the church, something that has caused Jewish people to be blessed over centuries, that Christians were meant to be in the olive tree and have this rich blessing, but it was hijacked. And it all started many years ago when this fine Baptist preacher,
operating in the gifts, I went away and prayed for 2 days. And God spoke to me and told me to come back and begin to bless those who were cursing me. He said, if you'll do that, I can open doors for you that no man can close, and I'll put a hedge of protection around you. That's exactly what has happened. And so here I am 38 years later, and God is still blessing me.
Well, God spoke to Pastor Bill when he started his new church, because the Baptist church wasn't open to speaking in supernatural languages and the gifts of the Spirit, to build his church on the Aaronic blessing. At that time, what did that mean to you?
Well, I didn't understand it fully. I began to look in the scriptures, and then I thought, who can help me? And I, in general, do not develop an emotional bonding with their spouses. It's more challenging. The average man thinks that physical intimacy equals emotional intimacy, but it doesn't.
Jewish, because we Jewish people say that the woman is the queen.
Well, she is now. She really is.
Well, I have a question, though, for Bill Ligon. I watched him come into the studio. I watched such strength inside of him, and I'm going to tell you a secret. He's 80 years young. What do you attribute to the vitality you have at 80?
I believe that my wife laying hands on me and my sons laying hands on me every day and speaking blessing, and now my grandchildren laying hands on me regularly, is a big part of giving me strength and vitality in my life and walking in the Lord, walking in the presence of the Lord.
So it's time into the desert, and how they were so blessed. There's a reason for it. And my guest is going to explain that to you. Pastor Bill, why?
God gave Moses the greatest challenge that any man's ever had in pastoring people. He had several million people, counting the children and the wives, and they had a slavery mentality, no self-esteem, no self-worth. He gave them 3 pillars of faith to change their lives into a great, viable nation, to respect themselves and honor themselves. Sid, those same 3 pillars of faith can be used to transform a person with no self-esteem and no self-worth. The first was the blood covenant. We call it Passover. The second was the moral code. We call it the 10 Commandments. God gave them to him on Mount Sinai. But the one that releases the favor of God upon the people was what we call the high priestly blessing, or the Aaronic blessing. God gave it to Moses, and he commanded him to have Aaron and his sons speak that blessing over his people every time they gathered together. Now that blessing then in Numbers 6:27 is used, and God says that he himself would be present when the blessing is spoken, and that his name would be placed upon the people, and that he would do the blessing. So
you know what? I feel like our people need a blessing right now. Do you feel like you need a blessing? Would you pray for them right now?
Yes.
So they'll understand, and this is found in Scripture in
Numbers chapter 6, verses 23 through 27.
Would you pray that now?
Yes, I certainly will. And I encourage you right now, when you receive this blessing, to remember that it is not I who releases the blessing, it's God. Because God said, thus you shall place my name on the sons of Israel, and I then will bless them. So you receive this now from the Lord. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, who's commanded the blessing to be spoken over your people, that your name might be placed on them, and that you might bless them. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord let the light of his countenance on you and give you his peace. Now the promise of the Lord is that his name has been placed upon you, and the Lord himself will bless you. So by faith, expect things to begin to happen in your life. And God bless you.
It is so supernatural as you understand the revelation that's been hijacked from the church of this ancient blessing. Let me tell you how supernatural it is. Tell me about that experience of the woman that had like a birthmark that was a V on her head.
My goodness, her husband brought her across the state to us in Brunswick, where we live, and she had a birthmark, a V in her forehead, and it had been there since she was a little girl. Her mother cursed her and said, I didn't want you. I wish you had never been born. And it began to surface, and they considered it a birthmark, but they also said that it was a sign that she was cursed, and they even gave her a name that began with a V. We began to teach her to bless those who cursed her, and as she did, and she started verbalizing those blessings over her mother and the other people who had spoken curses over her, Sid, the V began to fade. By the time she left, the V was gone, and her husband told me later over the telephone, he said, Pastor, she continues every day to bless those who curse her. When she does, it stays away. When she begins to take in an offense and groan over an offense in her life, it begins to fade back in. But then I remind her, you have to bless those who curse you, and when she does, it goes away. So she eventually learned to live with that birthmark in her forehead gone.
Now, but you actually saw it disappear before your eyes?
I saw it. It didn't happen immediately, but we worked with her for 2 or 3 hours, and as we helped her learn how to bless those, we identified those who had offended her and had her begin to bless those, pray for them. According to Luke 6:27, she began to experience the fading of that, and before she left, it was gone. I couldn't see it anymore.
Now, she saw it on the outside. Do you realize that's what's going on inside of you? Cancers, tuberculosis, heart problems, they all get healed as you understand the ancient blessing. I don't know anyone that teaches it better than
the bearer of the dividing wall.
His purpose was to create in himself.
And miracles happen. Some 200 spiritual grandchildren, you might say, Pastor Bill Ligon, around the country, but your own family. Your son, William, is married to Kim, and they are barren. They can't have children. What happened with them?
Well, we studied the principles of blessing on barren women in Genesis chapter 1, where God spoke to Adam and Eve and said, be fruitful and multiply. And a Hebrew scholar has written that that's when the womb opened and they began to have children. So my wife started laying hands. She laid hands on our daughter-in-law. She began to have children. She laid hands on others also. We had one lady, 40 years of age, who came in an institution of higher learning in the state of Florida somewhere as an outstanding university student. God is using the blessing. We've had many, many people, some in our own church, who were barren and unable to have children, and my wife and I would lay hands on them. My wife would lay hands on the wife's womb. I would lay hands on the husband, and God would open their lives to conceiving children.
And you know what I love? Bill's 80th birthday, many people, because they know his teaching, prayed a blessing over him. But included in those that prayed the blessing were William and Kim's children. How many grandchildren do you have?
They now have 5.
5. What did that mean for them to be praying over you, your grandchildren?
They love it. They love it. Sid, if they were here right now with you and with me, and I said, children, Mr. Roth needs a blessing, they would be around you like little ducks, laying hands on you, releasing the Aaronic blessing upon your life.
And by understanding the blessing, let me tell you what happened to his family. His son John works with him in the ministry and has written books to minister to children. His son William is a state senator. And I just want you to tell me the story again about when William went off to college. What did he say to
Well, he called me to his room, and he knelt in front of me, and he said, Dad, bless me one more time before I leave. So I was able to lay hands on him and speak blessing and success over his college career. He wanted to go into law school, and he's done that a number of times. Both of my sons have. They come and ask for the blessing on their lives.
Now, very quickly, tell me about the person that needed bypass surgery.
Well, her mother called me. She was a woman in her 30s living in an apartment alone and working, and the doctor had said she needed to have stomach bypass surgery. She wasn't able to lose weight. So I asked if she would bring her daughter to me, and so she did. I talked to her, and I asked her if she was willing to speak blessing over herself. She said yes, and I said, well, would you pray and ask God to show you what your weight should be? She did that, and then she began to stand.
I can't bless you, but I want to bless you in a new covenant way right now. I'm going to take that ancient blessing, but you see, because of the Messiah, it's past tense. And I'm going to bless you right now. The Lord has blessed you. Yes, he has. The Lord has kept you. Yes, he has. The Lord has smiled upon you. On you, and he has gifted you, and he has surrounded you with his favor and given you his shalom.